5:47 a.m. Lower Manhattan. January rain. You're standing outside a black glass tower holding a burnt $4 coffee and a resume printed at a FedEx in Queens. Your suit doesn't fit. The sleeves are too short. Nobody says anything, but everybody notices. Inside the lobby, the marble floors smell like bleach and money. A security guard scans your ID without looking at your face. 23 years old, student debt, $86,400. Checking account, minus $214. You ride the elevator with 6 analysts who already know how to disappear emotionally. Nobody talks, only Bloomberg notifications, only blue light reflecting off exhausted eyes. At 6:02 a.m., your managing director walks in carrying lukewarm espresso and a Patagonia vest that costs more than your monthly rent. He doesn't shake your hand. He says, Ohio manufacturing numbers moved before futures reacted. Why? Not hello, not welcome. A test, always a test. You answer too slowly. You see it immediately. The tiny pause, the microscopic disappointment. That's when you learn the first rule. Competence is assumed. Humanity is optional. By 11:40 p.m., you're still building pitch decks nobody will read. Your Uber home costs $73. The firm reimburses it. You feel rich for exactly 11 seconds. Then you open your banking app. Then you realize the reimbursement hits next Friday. You get home to a studio apartment beside a halal cart compressor humming through the walls all night. You sleep 4 hours. You set 3 alarms. You do it again, because the machine only respects repetition. 3 months later, you stop calling your mother back. Not intentionally, you just forget. Your world narrows into earnings reports, debt spreads, dry cleaning receipts, and 2:13 a.m. seamless deliveries. The reward arrives quietly. Your first bonus, $38,000, more money than your father made in a year driving trucks in Virginia. You buy a stainless steel Rolex Submariner from a dealer in Midtown. The salesman calls you boss. You replay that moment for weeks. Then comes the cost. You stop reacting to suffering. A pharmaceutical company raises insulin prices 400%. The portfolio makes $12.7 million. Everyone claps. Nobody mentions diabetics. You notice. You say nothing. Because the system doesn't reward honesty. It rewards discretion. Your body changes, jaw tight, shoulders locked, heart racing during silence. You begin checking Asian futures before brushing your teeth. At dinner parties, normal people sound slow. They talk about vacations. You think about volatility surfaces? You're no longer learning finance. You're learning emotional subtraction. Age 27. Compensation, $410,000. Sleep, chemically assisted. You discover information asymmetry. The real currency, not money, not intelligence. Timing. You fly business class to Singapore for a conference? Nobody calls it lobbying. Nobody calls it manipulation. The language is cleaner than the behavior. At 1:16 a.m. in a rooftop bar overlooking Marina Bay, a semiconductor executive mentions supply constraints in Taiwan. He's drunk. You're sober. You remember every word. 3 days later, the fund builds a $280 million position before the market understands what's happening. The trade returns 19%. You receive $4.3 million in carried interest. You buy a Tribeca penthouse with heated bathroom floors and silent German appliances. You stand inside it alone. That's the cost. Nobody trusts you anymore. Not romantically, not socially. Every conversation feels transactional. You start studying people the same way you study charts. Weaknesses, patterns, timing. Even your laugh becomes strategic. You're becoming efficient. Efficient people are dangerous. This is where the structural shift happens. You stop being a person. You become infrastructure. The fund gives you analysts, researchers, private aviation access, a Bloomberg terminal glowing in your apartment like a religious artifact. You wake up at 3:48 a.m. because the Bank of Japan adjusted yield curve policy by 11 basis points. Your pulse spikes before consciousness fully loads. That scares you. Only briefly. The reward? Access. Closed-door dinners in Luxembourg. Private equity founders texting you before IPO announcements. Politicians suddenly remembering your name. The cost? Your personality dissolves. You no longer consume information recreationally. Everything becomes extraction. Every friendship becomes optional. Every room becomes leverage. You notice your reflection one night in the darkened office glass. You look expensive. Not alive? The recession hits. Ohio factories close first. Then logistics. Then housing. You fly over economic collapse in a Gulfstream G65. Eating warm sea bass on porcelain plates. Your fund shorts regional banks before layoffs become public. You make $96 million in 6 weeks. CNBC calls it brilliant positioning. You call it pattern recognition. The reward is absolute freedom. Drivers, staff, multiple passports. A chalet in Gstaad you visit twice a year. The cost arrives slower. Your younger brother asks if you can help save his small business. You ignore the message for 9 days. Not because you hate him, because emotionally engaging feels inefficient. That realization follows you everywhere, in elevators, in mirrors, in silence. You've trained yourself to convert empathy into delay, and the machine loves you for it. By 36, you stop chasing markets. You shape them. A rumor here, liquidity pressure there, a strategic television appearance. You understand something terrifying. Most markets are emotional ecosystems disguised as mathematics. You begin moving billions with tone alone. The reward? Power without visibility. No voters. No accountability. No fingerprints. You attend a private dinner in Geneva where 3 men casually discuss currency instability like weather patterns. Combined net worth, $41 billion. Nobody raises their voice. Predators don't need volume. The cost? Paranoia. Always. Phones face down. Conversations outside. Non-disclosure agreements for house staff. You start believing everyone wants access to you. Eventually, that belief becomes true. You haven't had an uncalculated conversation in years. You stop owning things directly. Everything moves offshore. Cayman entities, Singapore trusts, Luxembourg structures nested inside Delaware shells. Even your wealth becomes abstract. Numbers flowing between invisible containers. You once dreamed about buying a Ferrari. Now you spend entire weekends minimizing tax exposure through treaty arbitrage. That's what the machine does. It replaces desire with optimization. The reward? Near total insulation from consequences. The cost? You no longer know where you ends and the structure begins. Assistants manage your calendar. Lawyers manage your exposure. Security manages your movement. Your existence becomes administrative. One night in Monaco, a woman asks what you actually do. You pause for 4 seconds. That's the longest silence in the conversation. Because you genuinely don't know anymore. 52 years old. Net worth fluctuates more daily than entire towns earn annually. You have everything, and your nervous system is collapsing. Sleep medication, blood pressure pills, private doctors who speak to you like a high-value machine under maintenance. Your son doesn't answer your calls anymore. Your ex-wife refers to you through attorneys. The reward? Legacy, university buildings, foundation boards, magazine covers calling you visionary. The cost? You know exactly how much of it was built from fear. Fear trades, layoff trades, panic trades. Currency collapses. You remember all of them, especially at night. Especially the faces in financial news broadcasts during market crashes. People crying. People ruined. You made money every time. The machine trained you correctly. That's the horrifying part. 6:01 a.m. Lower Manhattan. Rain again. You sit inside the back seat of a black Mercedes outside your fund's headquarters. Driver waiting silently. Security recognizes your face before the car stops moving. Then you see him. 23 years old. Cheap suit. FedEx resume folder bending under the rain. Coffee shaking slightly in his hand. You watch him stare at the building the same way you once did. Hungry. Terrified. Replaceable. For 1 second, you consider warning him. Telling him what this place consumes. How the rewards expand exactly as the soul contracts. How eventually the numbers stop feeling real. How one day he'll confuse power with identity. How one day he'll look in the mirror and see infrastructure instead of a human being. But the elevator doors open, and he walks inside anyway. Because the machine does not require permission. Only ambition. The market opens in 29 minutes. And somewhere above the trading floor, servers hum like a living organism that stopped caring who feeds it.